guy, Charlie Potter. Covers college football, college basketball, as it relates to the University of Alabama, as well as anybody out there. For BamaOnline.com, part of the 247Sports.com network. All right, Charlie, I know that you've landed out there in the Bay Area. First impressions of the San Jose area, and what's the weather like out there right now? Because we know it might turn pretty bad here in the next few days.
Yeah, right now, it's not rainy. It's cold, a little colder than I expected. I know I had a flight from Birmingham, had a layover in Houston, and then on to San Jose, and right before we took off from Houston, the pilot said it was about 38 degrees in San Jose, and, that's about, 10:30 or so Central Time, so you got to figure that's 8:30 in the morning here, and it warms up a little bit, but it's chilly. I'm glad I brought a jacket, that's for sure.
Yeah, when you think of towns named San Jose, Charlie, you don't usually think 38 degrees, do you?
No, you don't. But, right now, I came here, I guess it was the summer of 2017, and you always think about California not having any humidity and being beautiful. We came during a record heat wave, and it was miserable. So I'll take this, I think.
Yeah, usually 38 degrees is reserved for cities like Buffalo or Rochester. Those are the kind of towns I think of when I think 38. But so let's talk about what's next for this Alabama football team. Or actually, let's start with the practice week. Obviously, going into it, the status of Christian Miller at the outside linebacker position. Based on what you've seen throughout the week, what we've seen throughout the week, what is your expectation for Christian Miller as we get ready for Monday night?
Yeah, the good news is he's been out there. He's been dressed out. He has that support strip that we've grown to see, throughout the years on his hamstring. And he's taken part in some things, but he's been more limited than not. And, I think anytime you have a hamstring issue, that's a lingering, nagging injury, and you want to take as many precautions as you can. I know hearing from his dad, he says that he's taking every precaution and making very good progress, but we'll see. That's the big thing. I know they practice in town today, and then they head out here later this evening. I think they're supposed to land about 6 Pacific time, and I think tomorrow Christian's going to be the first guy that I go to if he's out there at media day, just see how he's feeling and see what he says, see what Nick Saban says. And he said he's questionable. That's to be expected. We saw this season alone, a similar situation with Devontae Smith, and just really recently, this past game, Devontae started looking back to 100%. So it's an injury, that you can play with, but your effectiveness isn't necessarily going to be 100%. That's for sure.
And if Christian Miller is the first guy you go to, is Brent Key going to be the second guy that you approach after the reports that Key may be headed to Georgia Tech following Monday night's game?
Yeah, I thought, after the Oklahoma game and Miami, I thought that I wasn't going to have to update any coaches and what they're doing, whether it was, Mike Locksley talking to him just about taking the Maryland job. You hear Pete Golding's name mentioned with the Oklahoma job. Danny knows whether he's officially going to be the offensive coordinator at Alabama next season. Now you got another one. That news kind of dropped from the AJC yesterday that it looks like Brent Key is going to go to Georgia Tech and be on Jeff Collins' staff as offensive line coach, and possibly another title that would earn him some more money. And right now it just sounds like that nothing's official. I guess it hasn't been decided yet. That's the way things are going. But he's going to be a guy that's going to coach in this national championship game. Coach this offensive line and things like that. I guess he's going to be 1B, I guess you could say, whenever media day hits early in the morning.
Let's talk about that Alabama offensive line going against a Clemson defensive front that will be without Dexter Lawrence, still extremely formidable. We've seen some classic battles between these two teams in the trenches in each of the last 3 years. How do you think Alabama's equipped this time around to deal with what it's going to see from that Clemson defensive front, Charlie?
Yeah, I think they'd feel a little better if Deontay Brown could play at left guard, but he's out now and probably some of the next season because of the NCAA violations. But I thought Lester actually played pretty good against Oklahoma. You saw kind of the inconsistency or maybe mistakes from on the right side when Cedric Wills had a couple of undisciplined penalties. But I think that this is going to be their biggest test, even without Dexter Lawrence. Clemson has some dudes up front and they played really well against Notre Dame, and Notre Dame doesn't have a slouch of an offensive line. So I think that's really the key matchup is what Alabama's offensive line can do to keep those guys off the Tua Tagovailoa and the running backs. And if they're able to go out and do a good job, you kind of do the same thing they did against Oklahoma, although I think everybody knows Oklahoma's defense in all phases doesn't stack up to Clemson, then I think Alabama's going to be in good shape. I think that's the key matchup for this Alabama team is keeping Tua clean and allowing him to make plays.
We saw Devontae Smith with a 100-yard game, his first since he pulled that hamstring against Missouri back on October the 13th. That being said, Alabama's backs were really the difference. In addition to Tua's sharpness throwing the football, the ability for Alabama's backs to hurt defenses in so many different ways was on full display down in the Orange Bowl. Do you think we're going to see a carryover of that, Charlie, from Oklahoma into Clemson?
I think so. I think Alabama just tries to go out there with a balanced approach because it's worked. I mean, you look at what this offense has been able to accomplish this season, say for maybe the first half of the Georgia game, it's done basically whatever it wants. And I think the balance helps with that. Having three healthy running backs helps with that. We haven't really seen a lot from Damian Harris in national championship games, but he has less than 200 yards to get to 1,000 for a third straight year. You think they might get him heavily involved because not only that, but what he provides as a pass protector going against that defensive line, I think is really big and something that doesn't get talked about enough. And then we've seen it it just seems like it's a weekly thing that Josh Jacobs gets a healthy amount of touches, whether it's out of the backfield, as a receiver, even as a Wildcat quarterback. I think that's going to continue. And then, last year you saw really in the second half of the national championship game, the guy they leaned on the most was Najee Harris. So, yeah, I think, whatever those backs can do to pick up first downs, move the chains, and keep the ball in Alabama's offensive hands, they're going to try to employ. I think a balanced approach is the best way to do that.
Defensively for Alabama, Charlie, no major concerns in terms of the quarterback position killing you with his legs this week. Although Trevor Lawrence will occasionally keep the ball on the zone read and some of those things. More about keeping defenses honest, though, than being a central part of the rushing attack for the Clemson Tigers. With that, looking at the Alabama secondary, specifically the corners, coming off that outing against CeeDee Lamb and the Oklahoma receiver, specifically CeeDee Lamb. How do you think Patrick Surtain specifically bounces back to that performance against the Sooners?
Yeah, I mean, that's something that he didn't have a great game. I don't think a lot of that was necessarily, or I don't want to say a lot of it, but some of it wasn't his fault. You could see just the madness on Twitter with people calling for offensive pass interference. And receivers get away with pushing off all the time. DBs do too. That's just kind of ticky-tacky. But I think, Patrick still had a great season. I think he's been Alabama's best corner. And I think after watching this game, or this last game, Clemson would probably go after him a lot. Just based on what they've seen in the receivers they have, whether it's Justin Ross, T. Higgins, or everybody from Alabama knows who Hunter Renfrow is. So I think it's a big game for him. It's an opportunity for him to bounce back. He's a true freshman, a guy that's going to start a lot of games for Alabama, and kind of put him into that fire will only help him grow. And I think how he responds from that will be really important. Trevor Lawrence is a very accurate quarterback. He hasn't looked like a freshman this season, so that freshman battle between quarterback and corner will be really interesting to watch.
We're talking with Charlie Potter, Alabama beat reporter for BamaOnline.com on a Friday edition of Southern Fried Sports presented by Carty and Lloyd Attorneys at Law and Mercedes-Benz of Tuscaloosa, as we let you get back to the tropical environs of San Jose, California. Charlie, give us your pick for Monday night. What do you got it as?
Yeah, I thought about it a lot. We've all seen the line where it's just basically a touchdown, some places a little less, and I think Alabama is a little bit better than that. We saw what this team was able to do last year against Clemson in the semifinal. I think everybody knows that Trevor Lawrence is an upgraded quarterback, so I don't think it's going to be basically a shutout in terms of touchdowns. But I think this defense, we'll be glad not to see Kyler Murray. I think they'll do a little bit better job in that regard. And, Clemson's defense is far better than Oklahoma's, so I think it's going to be a challenge for Alabama offensively, but there really hasn't been a team that's been able to stop them from doing basically whatever they want this season. So I'm going with a 10-point win for Alabama. Got it 35-25, and what will be a historic win if that's to come true. It'll be 15-0. Nick Saban's 7th national championship. A lot of storylines after that if they were to win that game.
No doubt about it. Well, Charlie, we'll let you get back to it out there. The Alabama football team arrives in the San Jose area later this evening, 6 o'clock local time, 8 o'clock Central. Charlie is on the ground. He'll have everything for you at BamaOnline.com. Thanks, Charlie.
No problem, man. Thanks for having me.